We are in the final days, not hours, of the Indianapolis Colts head coaching search. And I'm going to dive into all of that here today on this episode of Locked On Colts. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. The only thing more exciting than big game is the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. There's only 4 days left until Super Bowl. Are you ready? The Nissan Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive. Learn more at nissanusa.com. I am Zach Hicks. Obviously, I'm joined by absolutely nobody today. I kicked Jake off because he's been working to the bone lately, and he's got his daughter and stuff like that. So don't worry, guys. You guys got me today. Jake has taken a break. It's all Zach Hicks. And, we're going to have some fun today, guys, because we have a couple of updates here on this Indianapolis Colts head coaching search. So to start off this show, we are going to talk about some of those updates, some of the developments in recent days. I know Jake on his solo episode yesterday kind of talked about some of those things, but I'm going to rehash a couple of them and then talk about some of the new news that came out today on Wednesday, the day I'm Tuesday, the day I'm recording this. You guys are listening to it on Wednesday. So we're going to go through a little bit of that. And then to close out the show, I'm going to talk about the guys who I think are the front runners for this job and what they kind of bring to the team and what the Colts could actually love about each one of those candidates. But first, we had a little bit of head coaching news update from owner Jim Irsay. He took to Twitter. Apparently, he knew that you guys were feeling a bit impatient about this search. And honestly, not just you guys. I'm feeling a bit impatient about this search as well. Maybe that's just due to my own craziness and stuff like that. But Jim Irsay did take to Twitter. I'm going to throw his tweet up here. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you could just read along with me. If you guys are listening, bear with me. I read at like a fourth grade level, so we'll see if I can get through this. But Jim Irsay at Jim Irsay tweeted on Tuesday evening, we said, as an organization, parentheses Colts, then a football emoji. So there we go. We're making sure we know it's about football here. The coaching search would be an open-minded process and a thorough process. And the final decision would be strictly based on what is best for our franchise's success and best for our fans of Colts Nation. Football emoji, thumbs up emoji. Final decision coming in days, not hours. And then football emoji at the end. So again, if you didn't know that this was about football, then it is about football there. But yeah, Jim Irsay putting out there that the final decision is not coming within hours, it's coming within days. So you guys don't have to continually be refreshing your phones and your Twitter and everything there, putting Adam Schefter and all them on tweet alert, because he did kind of give us that indication that there's going to be a couple days of debate here. And for some people, I see in some people saying that, oh, this means it's going to be Shane Steichen, or it could be Eric Bieniemy as that dark horse. They're waiting till after the Super Bowl to announce one of these Super Bowl coordinators as the next head coach. I don't think that's the case. Now, don't get me wrong. It still could be Shane Steichen. It could be Eric Bieniemy, I guess. Like I would put like a 4% chance at that at best. It could be one of those guys, but I don't think that them delaying this process, delaying the final decision, is due to that. We got to look at the context of this head coaching search. The Indianapolis Colts did a first wave of 13 interviews. So 13 candidates that they had in, and they talked to them for approximately 2 to 4 hours each as a virtual interview, as kind of the preliminary rounds where they then eliminated some guys and they went down to 8 in-person interviews that lasted from 12 to 14 hours long. 12 to 14 hours per person for 8 interviews. Obviously, a couple people have dropped out. Ejiro Evero went to Carolina. Dan Quinn is out. There's a couple guys that have dropped out. But as of right now, there's still 7 of those finalists left that they've talked to for approximately 18 hours each. These are really extensive interviews, very thorough interviews, like Jim Irsay said in that tweet. I don't think that pushing this decision to later this week or to early next week is an indication that it's going to be one of these Super Bowl head coaches. I think it's an indication that there's a lot of information they have to decipher through here. If they had one person, if they had like a scribe person just taking notes of these interviews, I mean, each person would have their own packet of stuff that they said and stuff that was said in those interviews. So these are really extensive interviews. They're trying to go through all the stuff. And another thing we have to keep in mind is presumably Chris Ballard has been involved in this whole process. Ed Dodds has been involved in this whole process. Carly Irsay has her own input, and she's been involved in the whole process. Jim Irsay obviously is going to have his input. And then you have other people like Brian Decker, PR people, other front office people. These are all different people. And when you throw so many candidates in front of a bunch of different and diverse opinions of people, they might all have different candidates that they're putting up there. This might not be like a Chris Ballard wants one person, Jim Irsay wants another, let's hash it out. This could be, of the 10 people we have making this decision, they each have 10 different candidates that they're putting up there. So this is not as simple as this is my guy, here's your guy, all right, pick one. It's, here's all the guys we've talked to. They each have qualified reasons to be the head coach outside of one of them. And now we have to decipher from there and kind of pick our guy. So don't get me wrong, guys. I'm impatient as well. I would love to have a new head coach, and I don't want this to go too long, but it makes sense that this is going to be pushed towards later this week or early next week without saying, oh, this means it's 100% Shane Steichen. There are other candidates in here, and there's other reasons why it's being pushed back. And a big part of that is how thorough they have been in this process. On top of that, Mike Garafolo also added to Jim Irsay's tweet. Again, if you guys are on YouTube, you can read along with me. If you guys are on audio, again, bear with me here. But indications have been the Colts have narrowed down their list to a few finalists early this week, though they've kept those names tight for now. Jim Irsay says the process will continue for a few more days. So he did add, again, it's going to be a few more days on this process here, but he did say that the Colts have narrowed down the field to just a few candidates, which I think is very interesting because we've got inklings that they've narrowed down a little bit. Obviously Ejiro Evero taking the Panthers job is an indication that he was not in that narrowed down field that the Colts had. So that's why he felt comfortable taking a defensive coordinator job. We have heard inklings that Jeff Saturday has already been cut out. JMV said on his radio show, I believe on Tuesday morning or Monday morning, said that Jeff Saturday has been eliminated from contention, or he got eliminated 2 weeks ago or something like that. We've seen Ian Rappaport also say that it's leaning against Jeff Saturday. We've seen a lot of people come out and say it's not going to be Jeff Saturday at this point. So I think it's safe to assume that if they have narrowed down the field and narrowed down to a couple finalists, Jeff Saturday's not in that. Obviously, Ejiro Evero's not in that. And honestly, I think it's safe to say guys like Wink Martindale is probably not going to be in that group. Rich Bisaccia is probably not going to be in that group. And then Aaron Glenn, I don't think is going to be in that group either. So that kind of leads you guys to know who my finalists are and who I think the finalists for the Colts are going to be. And I'm going to go into each one of those guys here in just a minute. But first, let's talk about an awesome mobile game that we can't get enough of. It's Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about the fun we've had playing this game near the end of the season on our personal Locked On League. Well, now it's your turn to compete. If you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your franchise, then your dream can come true. And this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to glory, trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season. Again, guys, don't be like Jake. Don't get fired. He's been fired. I wouldn't get fired. I'm gonna dive into this tonight, just because I got to show Jake that I wouldn't get fired as quickly as he was. We've created another Locked On League for you guys to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Can you be the ultimate Locked On Football GM? Choose the Locked On League in the app to join. Can you create a football dynasty? Locked On Colts listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com to look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, guys, so going into this next segment here, I think ultimately the Colts are down to 3 candidates. Now, I'm going to leave like a 1% buffer for myself because I can never fully get rid of Jeff Saturday. Jeff Saturday is kind of like, if you guys play like the old Resident Evil games or something, he's kind of like Mr. X from, I think, the second game. He's just always there. And whenever you see him, it just terrifies you. Just the thought of Jeff Saturday coming out of nowhere and becoming the head coach of this team. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to be Jeff Saturday, but I can't fully get rid of that idea because of that whole Saturday press conference and what we've seen since and the national media. It's just, I can't officially get rid of him, but excluding that 1% that it could be Jeff Saturday, or that 0.01% that it could be Jeff Saturday, I think ultimately it's going to come down to Raheem Morris, defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, and Shane Steichen, offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, of those 3 I would even wager to say I think it's more likely it's going to be Brian Callahan or Raheem Morris. Those have been the 2 favorites since the beginning, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't still be the favorites, unless Steichen just had this phenomenal interview. But I really do think it's going to be Brian Callahan and or Raheem Morris. I think those are the top 2 guys. And let's go into these 3 candidates, because you guys know that on this episode or on this podcast channel, wherever you guys listen to it, we have talked about each of these guys in depth. We talked to Ben Solak about Shane Steichen, John Lithgow of Locked On Bengals about Brian Callahan, and then obviously Stephen Holder about Raheem Morris and his relationship with him. But we have dove into each of these guys in different ways, but we haven't just sat here and compared all 3 of them in one space. So that's what I'm going to do here. Now, let's talk about why the Colts could be split on these 3, because these are 3 good candidates, great candidates even. And it's probably better than what we would have thought the Colts could have got at the end of the season, which shows, that 1 of 32 thing that, and there's a lot of people on Colts Twitter and Colts social media that say, no matter what a franchise does, they're always going to be good candidates because it's 1 of 32 prestigious jobs. And we are kind of seeing that. So I'll give them a bunch of credit here, Jay, Garrison, and all them on social media, that, the Colts have got 3 great candidates, and the main reasons are very different for each one. So looking at Raheem Morris, the biggest appeal to Raheem Morris isn't his ability on one side of the ball, like these other 2 guys. It's not that he's going to bring in this schematically diverse defense that's going to, fuse Vic Fangio styles with Wade Phillips and all that. And it's not going to be like that. He's not going to come in and draw up this beautiful, like perfect offense. What you're getting out of Raheem Morris is probably the best leader out of the group. He is a guy that players will go to war for. Players have gone to war for. We saw Jalen Ramsey at the end of the season in a press conference that was very, very not coach speak, not player speak type of press conference. He was saying things like, he was defending Raheem Morris against doubters. He was saying how much he loves Ra and how Raheem needs to be a head coach, and he's happy that he's not because he gets to see him every day and be a part of him. But he was really going to bat for Raheem Morris, and you can see it in all these players that they just love Raheem Morris. He's a guy who is a player's coach, but he's also that very vibrant, vocal, hard-nosed leader. He can kind of be it all. So you're looking at just the type of guy that, pure CEO type of head coach. When you think of the Mike Tomlins, when you think of the Pete Carrolls, they don't really call one side of the ball, but they are guys who are just vibrant, hard-nosed leaders that get the best out of their teams. That's what you would get out of Raheem Morris. That's what the appeal with him is. And then on top of that, with all of his connections in the league, to the Monty Kiffin tree, to the Gus Bradley and Dan Quinn coaching trees on defense, and then on offense, the McVay and Shanahan trees, he could probably build the best staff around him. So you have a CEO type who's a great leader who could build a phenomenal staff around him. There's a lot of appealing aspects of that. So I understand why Raheem Morris has made it this far. And that's something the Colts are probably debating right now, is like, look, this guy could bring in an A+ staff for us and could probably be that leader that we think we were lacking with Frank Reich. Why they made that move to Jeff Saturday is because they wanted that leader. that's why they moved on from Frank Reich. So I think Raheem Morris gives them everything that they kind of wanted in this head coaching search and why he's still going to be in at the end. Now let's go to Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I have to address the elephant in the room. A lot of this has to do with connections. Brian Callahan, to a degree, is a bit of a nepotism baby. He got into all this because of his dad, Bill Callahan, phenomenal offensive line coach who's been in the NFL for a super long time. Chris Ballard actually played wide receiver under Brian's dad, Bill Callahan, at Wisconsin back in the 90s. So there is that connection between Ballard and Callahan that way. Other connections, obviously Brian Callahan worked with Peyton Manning back in Denver. I have heard that Peyton Manning did call Jim Irsay and the Colts and kind of give his personal recommendation for Brian Callahan. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Adam Gase got a lot of recommendations from Peyton Manning, and that didn't turn into anything great. But that's just another thing to throw in there, that Brian Callahan has the support of the franchise greatest legend. So those are the connections that kind of lead him to it. But also on top of that, Brian Callahan, really smart, reserved head coach candidate, a guy who has worked with Matthew Stafford closely, Derek Carr, Peyton Manning, Joe Burrow, some good quarterbacks. He's worked with some good and some great quarterbacks on a very personal level, either as a QB coach, offensive coordinator, or offensive assistant. And he's had a lot of success in the NFL. I mean, this Bengals offense the last 2 years with Burrow, with Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins has been very good, very diverse, very fun run scheme. And a very, very effective passing game. And that's not all him. Obviously, he's not calling plays there with Cincinnati, which I guess is a bit of a concern there. But he has a big, heavy hand in that offense and why that offense has been so effective and so tailored to Joe Burrow. So, with Brian Callahan, yes, a lot of it is connections and a lot of it is that is the appeal through that. But also he has a good resume. He's worked with some really good quarterbacks. He's gotten a lot out of those quarterbacks. And he's someone who I think could build a pretty decent staff. It's not going to be at the same level of Raheem Morris, but it's going to be a good staff. So that's the reason why I think Brian Callahan is going to be in this thing is, we love in Indy. We love those connections to players. That's why some of you guys are still so high on Jeff Saturday as a head coach, and why Jim Irsay apparently is still pretty high on Jeff Saturday as well, is those connections to the glory days. And Brian Callahan is kind of that connection to the glory days while also having a legitimate resume to be a head coach. So yeah, I think Brian Callahan to me is going to be the favorite over Raheem Morris, over Shane Steichen. I think it's going to be him, but that's not on any sourced info or anything like that. I just feel like it's going to be Brian Callahan with all those things going in his favor. But let's talk about the final candidate in Shane Steichen of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the NFL is moving towards the offensive head coaches. We have seen this for years now. Mike LaFleur, when he got hired with the Green Bay Packers, immediately had success. Kyle Shanahan, when he got hired with the 49ers, had a lot of success. Sean McVay with the Los Angeles Rams, Zach Taylor with the Cincinnati Bengals, all offensive head coaches hired in the last 5-10 years that have led their teams out of the gutter and into ways of success. Now, obviously that in some cases that matched with a young quarterback or a veteran Hall of Fame quarterback, but they were able to get the most out of those guys and get their team into chances to win the Super Bowl or actually win the Super Bowl in McVay's case. Now, Shane Steichen is the next man up in that kind of like mold. He is a pure offensive coach who has worked with Phillip Rivers. He's worked with Justin Herbert. He's worked with Jalen Hurts. And each place he's been, he's got success out of those quarterbacks. So very different quarterbacks with same or just slightly differing levels of success. He's been able to get the most out of whoever he's worked with. He's called plays at 2 different stops now, but honestly, this past season with the Philadelphia Eagles has been his most impressive stretch in the NFL. He's just done phenomenal work with Jalen Hurts, and he's really unlocked what Jalen Hurts can do as a passer and as a runner. He's taken that Philadelphia Eagles to just new heights. And honestly, Jalen Hurts, I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts owes like part of this season to Shane Steichen, but those two have really worked well off of each other. And Steichen has done a great job of adjusting and making just life easy on their star quarterback. So if the Colts want to be a part of this new age trend of innovative young head coach that is a whiz on offense, that's going to be Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen also could build a pretty good staff there. He could pick from the Eagles staff. He could pick from that Charger staff. That was pretty good when he was out there. So all three of these guys could build a pretty good staff. Obviously, Raheem Morris could build the best staff. Shane Steichen's biggest appeal is just that offensive ability on top of, the things that he could do with a young quarterback. But I think it's going to be those three. I firmly believe it's going to be those three. This is not sourced info or anything like that. It's just gut feeling, Zach's gut feeling, as you guys know on Colts Reddit. I think those are going to be the final three guys in this, this head coaching candidacy. And I think that's what the Colts are going to be debating these next couple of days. It's, do we want the leadership in the staff building of Raheem Morris, or do we favor the young offensive mind in Shane Steichen, or do we kind of want the best of both worlds in Brian Callahan? You can kind of go either way with this search. Ultimately, I think that's what they're debating, and why it's going to take to the end of this week to early next week to really decide is because there's a lot of good options. They actually have a lot of great options, and I think there's only a few ways they could mess this search up. So we'll see if they end up doing that. But ultimately, I feel like the Colts are in good hands now. I'm feeling better about the Colts. And if they hire one of these three guys who I believe are the finalists, then I'm feeling pretty good. So we're going to close out this show here in just a second. But first, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at PrizePicks, which is daily fantasy made fun and easy. Just pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their stat projections, then you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. Withdrawals are safe and fast as well, and PrizePicks is currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And before we close it out, guys, again, if you are looking for a delicious treat and you don't want all that fat and calories, then you gotta try a Built Bar. We're through the holidays now, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me and you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just the thing for you. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, and you won't even think that they're good for you. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is they are healthy, only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Swing by Walmart or Sam's Club today to get a box. All right, guys, so that's all I have for today. I hope you guys didn't mind this solo episode here. I actually want to hear your guys' takes and your guys' responses on these solo episodes. With the off season in full swing, Jake and I are trying to give each other little breaks here and there throughout the week, especially when content is a little dry like it is right now. So we're just taking some swings at some solo episodes. So let me know what you guys think in the comments of these solo episodes, and honestly, just endorse my solo episodes over Jake's. I think they're very different flavors. Jake, you're going to get reliable. You're going to get very stoic and very easy to understand. With me, you're going to get a little bit spastic and a little bit information overload, but it's fun either way. I promise it's fun either way, guys. But that's it for us, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with some head coaching developments, and hopefully with both of us here to really bounce off each other. Make sure you guys are following us on social media at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on the Twitter. Also, subscribe to Locked On Colts on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings and reviews, and just any comments that you guys have for us. Be sure to jump in there and leave them for us. And thank you guys for making us your first listen of the day. Next, subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday and Monday. Local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys tomorrow.